So thank you, everybody, for joining. You know who I am. If you don't, if you're new at the company, I am an ethical hacker. I do public speaking, training. I co-founded the Black Hat Conference in Saudi Arabia last year and hosted a stage there. It was actually really, really cool. It's interesting to start a conference. You get a lot of really high-level guests, like the CISO for MasterCard, Robinhood, Equifax, Experian, Coinbase, all sitting on a panel or sitting in the same room, going out to dinner with these guys and being able to realizing oh crap, if you think about it, the buck stops here for a lot of things. It's like we're in charge. Between 40 and 45, this industry is really interesting, especially cybersecurity and tech. Most experts who write books and go on the speaking tour have 40 years of experience going, and they went to Harvard Business School and then they did their thing and now they're pushing towards retirement. It's like there aren't any 65, 70-year-old cybersecurity experts or former hackers, really. There's very, very few. So today I wanted to talk about some of the cool gadgets that I have acquired over the last year, why that's relevant, and trying to make it relevant to even further niche of a company that deals with wireless. So one thing to look at is one-time attacks. You have a limited access window to a device that you're trying to either, let's take it in the context of penetration testing. I need to get access for a long period of time, or I'm just trying to get one payload deployed, something accomplished quickly, but it's not a persistent attack. It's not a backdoor that gives me access forever, or it's sabotage. There's different kinds of things that you can kind of look at. The persistent attacks would be like hardware keyboard loggers, or screen grabbers, lots of different things. And then there's just flat out sabotage. That doesn't happen quite so often, but there are a few devices that are marketed towards pen testers that do sabotage type attacks, whether you're just trying to take down a competitor or you can actually use them in how you might see in a movie where a hacker gets the FBI or whoever's raiding them, and you just push a button on a remote and it wipes all your computers out. It's done. And you have your hard drives encrypted so they can't access them, and all the electronics in your computer can be completely toasted by one very, very tiny little device. And it comes in a cool little case. It's called USB Kill. So there are keyloggers, whether it's software or hardware based, they're particularly bad. Screen recorders, where it will sit between HDMI on your computer. They're easily hideable. You wouldn't notice whether something's been plugged in, and they'll send using a wireless transmitter. You can actually connect to an access point built into this device. Probably takes 15 to 20 minutes to set up. You can set it up at home, and then you can plug it in less than 30 seconds if you don't have mittens on or whatever the default stock photo for hackers is. It's like we've got the balaclava, hoodie, gloves. It's like, why are they wearing gloves? Is it cold? Maybe it's for fingerprints. I don't quite know. Aren't they using their own computer? No one wants, that's really bad posture. No one wants to sit hunched over. It's all the stock photos are just, that's a whole other problem. I could probably give a whole webinar on that. And then we add malicious cables. They used to be a thing of science fiction. I assure you they are not. The risk of USB charging ports. There are a number of videos from hacker enthusiasts who take hardware keyloggers or screen grabbers or things and embed them into keyboards. So if you know what type of keyboard someone has, you can buy that thing, take it apart, fuddle with the electronics, and it doesn't take that much effort to put something in line so where they're plugging in their USB keyboard and now it's compromised. A lot of times the motivation behind this is crypto, getting encryption keys to be able to steal access to money. And if all the money is digital and it's only accessible via the web, like you can't just go to a crypto bank and you can't rob a crypto bank. There aren't any. You can't steal someone's crypto out of their wallet. There's a certain level of tech that you have to do. These are probably the most common attacks, which is why I don't envy a friend of mine, Philip Martin, who's the key CISO of Coinbase. It's like they deal with the most sophisticated and relentless people trying to break in, and because that's where the money is. So bad USB, this can be a payload is a set of scripts written in what's called ducky language. It's bad USB has been now sort of adopted into the name a USB rubber ducky. And it's a playground for people who are either the good guys trying to show what bad guys can do, and the demos are something akin to like old viruses where, does anyone remember when no one had internet, but we had computer labs, and then you could put in this Mac program or some plugin or extension that would load and it would make like a cat jump between all the different computer screens in sequence. And it wasn't malicious. It was either annoying because it was hard to quit, or it would interrupt people and cause disruption, especially among children. But that's all it did. That's kind of the point behind most of these, is that when being used properly, I guess you could say, the payloads, well, my favorite one I was just sharing with Heather, it will do a variety of things. Instead of trying to execute PowerShell or run a program that could get hit by an AV scanner, it will type. So the USB rubber ducky will actually act like a keyboard. So the computer doesn't see any difference than keystrokes from this. And so it'll select the run box, type in a command really fast, like 100, 200 characters a minute, and execute PowerShell, and then type in everything. So it's looking like a really, really savvy computer user. Some of the funnier ones are, it will go into your browser and add the Best of Rick Astley CD to your shopping cart on Amazon. This is called the physical Rickroll. So to prove to your client that you had access to their machine, whether it was a USB thumb drive, whether it was over the internet, whether it was by Wi-Fi or a bad cable or whatever, you somehow gained access to be able to add their CD to your Amazon shopping cart. So when you go, hey, we captured the flag, we did what the objective was, which was gain access to a computer and be able to pull something off. They say, okay, prove it. Well, go check your contacts, and you can add the Rick Astley contact to their Outlook, or you can change their homepage to the YouTube video so they get Rickrolled every time they open up their thing. Or some of the payloads show how you can exfiltrate, which means extract, essentially, all the passwords that are saved in Chrome, which isn't great, which is it's another very easy demonstrable way of saying, don't save passwords in browsers. There's literally an executable available on the internet called chromepass.exe, and it's just for extracting passwords out of Chrome without having to do a whole lot of other things. That's all it does. And it's for administrators and this, that, and the other. Now, this was, I think, the 2014 white paper on bad USB. It can emulate a keyboard, issue commands on behalf of the login user to exfiltrate files, VPN configs. It can send encryption keys. It can look for things specifically. So you have to have an idea of what you're looking for, or kind of figure out, okay, they're going to save this in here, here, here. Like you want to copy their entire folder of photos, or you want to take all their private and public keys from the encryption library. Certain things like that can be done. You just have to know what you're doing and program it in advance. It can also change devices from keyboard to network card. And emulating a network card, it can then change DNS settings. And if you know how important DNS setting, it's almost always DNS when there's an internet problem. Well, if you change DNS settings, I can reroute Facebook traffic or Microsoft Office traffic to a completely different server and have it look perfect. And in fact, it will work when you type in your credentials. And not only that, it will pass the session cookie, which will then allow you to bypass MFA. So it will say, hey, log into Microsoft Office 365, you type in your credentials, you get your MFA prompt, and it's seamlessly handling all of this, even though it's really a malicious, what we'd call like a rogue access pointer, in this case, man in the middle. So that attack will then generate a session cookie, which then allows you to not have to redo MFA every single time. But then the hacker actually has that. I did a webinar with Kevin Mitnick 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, all about this type of thing and the importance of patching of different products. And he very clearly in a demo showed how that's accomplished. And the only solution really is FIDO tokens, if I have some. So YubiKeys and FIDO tokens, we still haven't figured out how to break. That solves MFA problems. That solves security and login problems. There's I think a deployment headache that comes along with it. But bad USB attacks, USB rubber ducky attacks, I think those sound funnier, are definitely a huge, huge problem when you are dealing with somebody who is determined to gain access to your systems. That and like never go to a conference and take free electronics. They're not free. Someone's paying for them. Chances are even the company who offers them is giving them to you out of good intention, but somebody might have modified them in the meantime and then put them back. No one's counting how many are in the bucket. And if there's a malicious person who's so inclined, it wouldn't take long to poison some of them. If anyone's familiar with, there was an attack in Iran for their nuclear enrichment program, and someone had developed a piece of USB malware that targets, I think it was Siemens manufactured centrifuges, and the virus was put on a thumb drive and dropped somewhere, and someone plugged it in an air-gapped network, which then infected the network, which then targets the centrifuges that are only made for uranium enrichment, which then makes them spin until they break themselves, and broke all their devices. And that was, I think, the NSA and Israel joint developed. But that's a USB attack. And these are people who are like, all right, we're definitely doing something we're not supposed to. We're enriching uranium against all the United Nations standards. We should probably be careful. Oh, wait, free USB. Like, it's, everyone's capable of falling victim to this type of thing. Here's a new product that kind of came out fairly recently. It's called the OMG Cable. It's developed by a very close friend of mine who is working on a project with him. So I was able to get kind of early access to some of it. It looks exactly like an iPhone cable. You would not be able to tell the difference, so much so that I have to put a piece of tape on one of them to know which one's which. And inside of this cable, on one end, so there's the Lightning connector, and then there's the USB-A or USB-C connector. Well, that end has a web server and a wireless access point built into the tip of it, which is then configurable. So you can set up an IP address that's static, connect to that wireless network from Kali Linux, for example, and then run payloads. All sorts of different things that you can do. This is plugged into a computer because USB-C. Now you can use an adapter to plug it into a Lightning connector or an Android and do the same things. It has a built-in keylogger, so it'll keylog, 1 million keystrokes, and then it'll automatically send them over email if you configure it that way. Or if you've got wireless access from within, 100 meters, you can pull all that stuff off before the built-in storage fills up. This one is particularly lethal because it'll allow you to open up a shell and interact with the computer, and the user won't have any idea. It'll also do the USB rubber ducky functions, but it'll also allow for Metasploit and an open for SSH tunnels. And it's $200, and you can't tell the difference. I mean, I'm sure you could probably weigh them, but that would be, who's weighing cables? That sounds like whoever's doing that I question your choices. And here's another fun device. I don't recommend, there's very limited uses for it, but it has capacitors that are built in and on a remote trigger, which it actually comes with this really cool little remote. And it has a little skull on it with USB kind of sticking down. It kind of looks like Cthulhu, and a little remote, and you can trigger it once, you can trigger it continuously, but it will fry electronics. And has anyone ever taken apart an old disposable camera and the flash, and there's a little thing, and if you touch the wrong part of metal while the flash has been primed, you shock the crap out of yourself. Well, it has a whole bunch of those really small ones, and it will send back up to 20 or 30 times the amount of electricity that it was able to store, frying everything: power supply, motherboard, RAM. If you've got a solid state drive, probably that too. All the electronics are just completely toast. There aren't a lot of legitimate pen testing uses, despite their marketing team trying to sell people on the idea, but you toast whatever device you put it in. So if I end up doing a live demo, I'll probably end up bringing a little junk laptop you can get from Goodwill or something for 10 or 20 bucks, putting it on a screen, plugging an HDMI cable, let everyone see, and then give someone the remote and let them torch the thing, because it makes a cool little ticking sound as it's charging up and then releasing all that energy. There aren't a lot of good defenses against it. You could buy a proprietary power surge thing. I don't know how well they work. It'll be a while before manufacturers are catching up to this style of attack. But unless you have something like you're a law firm and you have information that someone just wants to make disappear, then they have to gain access to all the devices or servers. So there's a lot of little things like that. So it's one argument for keeping things in the cloud rather than trying to have all your servers in-house. Maybe just lock your stuff in a security cage and have good physical security. It prevents people from being able to access. But for security cameras that are wired, that's another good example. Someone could just completely torch anything they can pretty much plug in. This is from my Twitter account. I posted this when I was taking my son in for a physical, and I was walking out of a very big hospital here in Seattle. And this is the security desk. That's the front. Now, what you can see in this picture is there's a Word doc with a highlighted section and 16 camera feeds on another screen. So that's a closed circuit, closed loop system. Probably not running Windows. It's probably running whatever proprietary security camera is set up. But that's a Windows machine. I don't know if it's domain logged in. I don't know if it is, but it's not locked. And it was for 5 or 10 minutes, which means they don't have an automatic log out feature. No one responded on Twitter. But this is the perfect example of, okay, where's the machine? Is it on the back of the monitor? Like sometimes they have a small form factor thing. And this is what hackers think of is, and yeah, I mean, I guess me included, but with different outcomes, I guess. It's a small form factor machine on the back of it, or the machine is sort of hidden. So you can see one cable that's running off to the left in through like a cable port for cable management. That might be where the machine is. It might not be. But if I can gain access in about 10 or 15 seconds and plug in a device that's pre-configured, it's game over. And even if you didn't have a bad USB or something else, there's other things that you can do, one of which I have a really good example for. This just drives me crazy. I can't look at it for too long or I get annoyed. So about a year ago, Razer Mice became the topic of conversation in the security community because it is a huge issue. $30, maybe 20 for a wired Razer mouse. When you plug in the device, let's say you've got a Windows 10 machine, version 20H2, not a out-of-date operating system by any means, unless you haven't patched. You buy this Razer mouse, you check your your privileges at work, and you are a regular user, not an administrator. Or if it's not domain joined, you're just a user and your parents have you set up as their admins, but you can't really do anything. If you plug in this mouse, it installs as NT Authority system privileges. Not completely unreasonable. You can't usually install things as just a basic user, which is kind of the point. But that would be a real headache for being able to install, let's say, a keyboard or a mouse. So they set it up to where it gets system privileges. Now, during the installation, there's a little thing in the bottom right that says install location. Now, if you change the install location, it opens up a Explorer window under system, which then if you hold down the shift key and you right click anywhere in the blank space, it'll allow you to open up PowerShell. What happens then? If you do who am I into PowerShell, which is running as administrator, it says you are system. And now you can do a lot of different things. Plug in a USB that has Mimicats, which is a really clever program for getting passwords, for getting Kerberos tickets, encryption keys. It will scan active memory. So stuff that's not even in storage or available to be clicked on or found through Explorer, it'll scan all sorts of different things and extract usernames and passwords, public and private encryption keys, or you can then spoof computer IDs. It is one of the things that event like a SIEM would look for, is a hacker trying to gain access and then escalate privileges by downloading Mimikatz from somewhere. So if a hacker can't just plug in a USB, they're going to try and do it from somebody else, invoke web request, get something to download this file, and you're looking for certain file signatures. So you, Microsoft AV would automatically have that signature. But if you encrypt it and then change the file signature just a little bit, or download it in little pieces, sometimes it can evade detection mechanisms. And all you had to do to bypass all the security was Razer Mouse. So that's a fun demo. Like if I was a teenager, I totally would be using that type of thing. And I saw ATMs in Cancun that were running Windows XP in the background. Like there was a ATM in the front of this little bodega store, and then on the back end there was XP sitting on this monitor above the pharmacy windows. Nothing was locked, and it was XP. So all you have to do is ask the guy to pick something off the shelf and plug something in real fast and hope no one notices you. I mean, if that's your security is hope, then you're gonna have a bad day. But this will, just a Razer mouse, will bypass and give you all of the permissions, and you're left with only what's in your imagination for what to do with it. Whatever program you want to run, you can run it. Whatever thing you want to install, change backgrounds. Don't do anything against the law. So Mimicats, this is kind of a general overview of it. Log into Windows, credentials get stored in Windows LSAS memory. User browses the internet. Attacker drops malware into the victim using social engineering. That point is where the Razer Mouse allowed us to get to. Social engineering, human hacking or trickery or being sneaky, or if you want to think of it like being a magician, like look over there and plug in USB. User clicks on malware, gets infected. Attacker now gets admin. We escalated to admin privileges by just installing in a different location and piggybacking on the installer of the mouse. Now they can load Mimicats, and you dump all the clear text passwords on the machine. Like you start with ones probably in browser, collect all those, send them back out, collect all the ones that are in the local machine, and then move on to domain stuff. Chances are you've got domain creds stored in browser. If you're storing stuff in browser and not using a password manager, use a password manager. If you like, start today. Why not today? What are you doing after this? Installing a password manager would be a great answer. So to recap, some good advice on all this. Strong passwords, anything more than 15 characters. Using a password manager allows you to have as ridiculous of a password as you want, or you can just use a phrase. Use the first, 20 characters of your favorite song. Or it could just be something that like a mantra, or my dog is a really terrible driver, or my cat hates driving on freeways. Like, it doesn't have to be clever. It just has to be rememberable. It just has to be long. It doesn't have to have all the crazy symbols and characters, because that's not how math works. When computers break passwords, they're taking every possible character with all the letters, numbers, symbols, capitals, and lower cases, and trying every iteration of them if they are starting from scratch. If they're not, they're using password lists. Now, password lists are gathered from all the breaches everywhere that are collected by good guys and bad guys. And then all of the passwords that were ever used get tried first. It's kind of like the opposite of the World War II statistician who was looking at all the planes coming back to see, okay, these are the planes that came back, and here's all the bullet damage. We need to armor all the opposite parts. So if you see bullet damage, armor the other parts. And people were like, dude, why shouldn't we armor the ones where the bullets are? And he's like, because the ones that didn't come back were shot are the ones you need to worry about. So they're doing the opposite. Don't store password in browsers. That's like a huge no-no. There are even apps that have been pulled from like the Chrome store or Windows that will and have been known to do that first, because it's within that scope of the browser that they have access and permissions, maybe not the whole system, but if you're storing stuff in browser, it's just too adjacent to trouble. FIDO tokens and YubiKeys for logging into Windows, logging into domain, logging into websites. You can configure them for Dropbox and Gmail. All the major services allow for FIDO tokens and these types of security keys. Dual logins for user and admin. So if you need to install something, it prompts you for admin credentials to be able to do that, which will save you a lot of headache, because if you are human and make mistakes and can be tricked, all of us qualify for that. You wouldn't want to have automatic admin privileges by default. The only reason that's it's not justifiable, but the typical response is, well, I don't want to have to log in and log out and Windows already has it built in to escalate to an admin, and all you'd have to do is plug in your security key and it'll allow it, and then you go back out. If a piece of malware needs to install something, it's going to have to go through that same process. And chances are you're going to go, wait a minute, what's this doing? Like, I didn't try to install anything. Why is this Word doc trying to install this other program or PDF doc? Because that's where a lot of malware will get embedded. And they'll trick you into clicking on the thing by saying, we've just charged your card for Norton antivirus. Here's your invoice. Good luck, $989. And be like, what? No, that's my rent. And you click, not realizing you didn't do that. They just made that up. They lied. And at some point, one of us or all of us will get tricked by something we shouldn't have, whether we were tired or kids were yelling, whatever it was. Don't leave your workstation unlocked anywhere for any time. Free USB drives are not free. Secondhand security equipment it's a trap. Buying a router, buying anything that's not brand new from manufacturer. If you're buying security equipment, I wouldn't even shop on Amazon. There's too much gamification of the review process and third-party vendors and people buying video cards. I even bought something on Newegg I had to send back because it was like brand new computer, but it didn't have the video card installed. And there was a bunch of missing pieces and something was broken. And it was obvious it had been booted because it wasn't the screens that I expected for when an OEM install gets. But if you don't know the difference, you're just going to think, oh, well, whatever, this is fine. How do you know it came from somebody who's got your best interest at heart? Maybe you clicked on the wrong Newegg and somebody has set up a man in the middle. They tried to, whatever you ended up buying was going to be compromised no matter what. There's a lot of different scenarios that could work. Some of them require a little bit more narcissism than others. Like, you have to be excessively paranoid and think, oh, like everybody's after all my stuff. Most people don't have stuff anyone's after. You're just going to get caught up and they're going to steal your identity. And it's worth at least something. But the government's not after you specifically, probably. I mean, say that being me, knowing there's a list with my name on it, at least in a couple of places. So, and as usual, my contact info. Yeah, but I wanted to at least A, be able to take questions, and B, show you what some of these devices looked like. So no one's going to be, I'm pretty sure no one's going to be begging me to keep showing PowerPoint.
I think you're in the clear.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thanks, Bryan. Awesome talk as always. And we do have a little bit of Q&A that's coming in.
Do you want to show your toys first?
Oh, yeah, that's right. You were going to do a live demo, right?
It's like it's like when people come over to the house and company, my kids want to show off all their toys. And I'm like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, totally.
Keychain in Apple's pretty good. I haven't noticed or seen anything pop up on it. I use the Apple keychain, so that's for Nick Smith. Any security advice when using multi-factor like YubiKey, don't give it to someone. I mean, they make little, they make them this size in USB-C. They make them with both USB-C and USB-A. God, I have so many of these. So ones that kind of look like this. It has Lightning and USB-C, and then you have the USB-A ones. They're all good. They make ones that are really small form factor, which look like this, so they don't get hit on your laptop or whatever. You can use them on iPhones and Android devices. I think a lot of the problem that people run into is trying to explain why they're using one of these for all their websites. Like, dude, really, you're that paranoid? And be like, well, there's far less controversy with USB security than it is with like, hey, COVID recommends we wear masks or don't take ivermectin. Like, there's all the experts unanimously agree this is the way to go. Now, explaining it to normies or people who haven't kept up in cybersecurity, that's fine. Just come up with a good excuse of like, dude, this, I'm just staying safe. It was a very cheap solution. Some of them are under $100, $50, depending on what the use case is. They make really expensive ones, which can be used for protecting public key certificate root authority. So if you host your own certificate authority for all of your devices, if you're a larger enterprise, web server certificates, device certificates, all that kind of thing, and you have to protect those things and keep them off of a Windows installation where, like I said, Mimicats can actually get those, and they can actually get encryption keys and PGP keys. If you're trying to keep all that stuff safe, those are, I think they make a $625 USB one, and it almost goes all the way into the port, and you just have a little hook that you can pull the thing back out. So it's not easy to steal, as well as if you have it in like a server rack, then you can lock that and whatever. But using these it adds a level of annoyance, which is another reason I think a lot of people don't use them, but it will keep you safe 99.9% of the time from all new people trying to log in. And it also adds a level of like, it's going to work. You're not trying to get MFA prompts and remember passwords and a whole bunch of nightmare. These can actually expedite your login process and like wear them on a chain, like a dog tag, or put them in your purse, or put them along with other devices in like an RFID blocking Faraday cage bag. Another project I'm working on, hopefully I'll have a working demo this year, is a repeater that will take key fobs and send the signal from a BMW key fob to the car, which will allow for what's called a replay attack, which then means I can open up the car if I just get within a certain range of the key fob. You could be asleep, I could just go stand next to your house and bam, open the car door. And they've demonstrated this before, but building one of your own is a good challenge.
Right. Good stuff.
The USB kill looks like this. It's like kind of a whole bunch of little capacitors, and it comes with this really fun little remote.
Oh my gosh. This little Evil Knievel remote.
Remote detonation button.
Yeah.
2 different little buttons, and then a ton of little adapters in a case with foam. Like,
Wow.
Even if I use this once, it's like, yeah, I want to have that.
Right.
USB rubber duckies can look like this. They have ones that have wireless access. They have ones that are just, so you can program them from somewhere else once you've plugged in the device. This one's deliberately big, so okay, yeah, obviously, who's plugged this into my computer, right?
Right.
But there's a lot of times people won't unplug stuff because they don't want to break something. They're not confident enough. They don't know all the different things or why everything is the way it is. Another reason I carry a lot of these, this is a 32,000 milliamp hour battery. I probably have at least 3 at that or bigger, along with one that has a flashlight built in and another one that's a solar panels built in. So when there's a power outage, everyone's got power to all their devices, LED batteries, those types of things. But also you won't have to plug into charging ports if you're at an airport, because these types of cables can be used and embedded into charging ports very, very quickly, because one of the ends, this is just pass through. This is just power pass through and data pass through. This has all of the malicious stuff. So they sell just this part cut off called OMG plugs, and it has all the same functionality, but you plug it into the back of someone's computer, they're never going to look at it. And now you've got, it's kind of like in Star Trek when the guy had like the little parasite embedded into the back of his neck. It's like this little piggybacker that you can't really see, who's really in control of the situation, has access to the host, and the host is just sort of doesn't really know.
Just going about the day.
I can't believe they put a web server in this. The next thing that isn't out yet is a DAuth attack. So it's a little USB drive, tiny thumb. You plug it into a battery, and if you get within 50 or 100 feet of any device that's wireless, it will de-authenticate it and disconnect it from the network. Wireless security cameras are no longer safe under that type of invention.
Yeah.
So you just throw one of these batteries in like a sort of a tough case under every single wireless camera, and you're done. So that makes for the case of hardwiring everything. Because defending against that type of attack, there aren't really any good ways of, or built-in sort of OEM capabilities to understand you were being DOS attacked. They make devices now that can tell you, but that's adding a whole level of like the amount of nerds there are who are capable of doing that, plus buy into the fact that it's possible, and then implementing it is it's like 4, maybe double digits now. But it's all within the realm of cable. It's all available on Amazon. Every single one of these things. You can buy signal jammers. It's super illegal, but you can buy them. I'm pretty sure you can buy lawn darts, and those are illegal.
Amazon, man.
Yeah, you can definitely buy signal generators on Amazon.
Oh, that's a hack RF.
It's not actually. It's a spectrum analyzer. It's called Tiny SA.
Okay, well, they have a hack RF one that looks kind of like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can buy a signal analyzer, and then there's software that'll turn it into a.
Oh, it's preloaded. I just flip a switch, and instead of receiving, now I'm just transmitting. Signal generator, not RF jammer, for any FCC people that are listening.
Right. I mean, Cali gives you the options. Like, are you in the United States? These are the spectrums you can use and the power levels that you're allowed to use. Like, you mean the whole ability is just honor system? Yeah, that'll work.
Exactly.
We just had a question pop up in the Q&A, which is a good segue actually to have Eric emerge from his.
Oh, Forrest bought a wireless game controller from Amazon for PC games. Should I review? No, it's probably not. If you've got antivirus running, it'll detect anything after enough people will buy stuff like that. Like if you're buying security devices like firewalls and stuff, Amazon might be okay. Go direct to manufacturer if you can, if the price isn't too big of a deal. Don't buy used security devices. I should probably hit that a little harder. Does 7-signal monitoring surface security issues such as DOS attacks? I don't know, but I can be persuaded to.
Well, that's what the question I was saying is a good segue into Eric, because I think he's actually going to talk a little bit about security with the Sapphire Eye. So Eric, are you around to emerge from hiding and or captivity? Don't tell.
There he is.
Hey Eric, how's it going?
I'm doing great. How is everybody out there?
Doing so well.
Outstanding. Yep, things are cozy in here in the hidey hole, but I've emerged. And Jim, I did want to ask you about that. The Sapphire Eye, can it get DOS events out of the air?
We can detect those, including historically, so you can see if there have been big spikes in those DOS frames that were unexpected. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that wasn't on the docket today, but I'm glad it was brought up.
Is Sapphire Eye just software, or is there hardware to go along with it, or?
There is hardware to go along with it. Yeah. So that's what it looks like.
Hardware sensor.
I have one right up here.
How much do those things retail for? And do you have special pricing for friends of family or friends?
Let's catch up after the webinar.
Yeah, let's catch up
after the webinar. Right. All right, well, here we go, guys. We're going to take the last couple of minutes here. It's time for 7 Minutes with 7-Signal, where we take a little itty bitty feature inside 7-Signal, unpack it, and show you how it can have some nice value. So away we go. I'm going to share my screen. And let's do this. So as you guys are aware, when you've got Mobileye on your computer, and just give me the thumbs up if you can see that okay. All right. So as you can see here, when you've got Mobileye on a device, and this is actually a new Google Pixel 6 phone that we have laying around the office. Look at that. It's the Office Pixel 6. Is that remarkable or what? But what's cool about it is that it just sitting there in our lab acts as a form of a sensor, if you will, kind of seeing what's going on in the air all around it. Remember, we can't hear or see these Wi-Fi signals, so we don't know necessarily what's going on around it unless we have a little eye in place, in this case, the Mobileye. When I mouse over these dots, you can see every few minutes we're taking a little glimpse of what is in the air all around this device. And this is obviously in a multi-tenant building where there's all sorts of neighbors above us, below us, across the hall from us. And the other thing that's pretty cool, okay, is having this historical record of everything that's going on around a device is that this can be exported. So by clicking this little CSV export right here, you actually have the ability to now look at all of the detail any moment in time that I've chosen and see everything that was captured all around. Now, the reason why I like this so much, okay, is because when I open this file, yeah, you can see the SSIDs, but from a security standpoint, people will spoof the SSIDs, right? But what I thought was a little bit relevant today is to show you how, you know, we are doing an OUI lookup for all of these MAC addresses that are out there. And so we can actually see who the manufacturer of these devices are. And if you see something that you're not expecting, you know, you should be paying attention. And that's what these sessions are with Bryan are all about. It's all about raising your level of awareness. It's about knowledge and education and informing yourself. And one way that you can do that is when you come into 7Signal, you can run this information and you can take a look around and identify if you see things that look a little funny in terms of the OUI manufacturing, you know, the organizational ID, right? That's what the OUI is. And I got a couple more examples of that right here. Let's go to this next one here. And when you see things that look a little strange, manufacturers that you don't recognize, you Google them, you look them up, and you see what's associated with that manufacturer in order to give you some clues as to what is going on, what is in your environment. Okay, like Bryan was saying, sometimes you can't see these things. Sometimes they're kind of hidden. They're hard to recognize. They're disguised, if you will. And so if we're able to get this information, okay, then, and it can be really helpful and really useful. All right, let's look at another example. Okay, so this one, look at all of the, you know, you've got all of the Eero stuff, you got the Google network stuff. Of course, you're going to see things that you do recognize, but when you run across things that you don't recognize, you need to be careful. Down here with the Verizon, you know, people setting up MiFis, you know, you can see this, and they can have the same SSID as you. And that's why it's just really important to see what is going on around my device at all times so that I can make some decisions accordingly. I think I've got one more example that I'll share with you guys. Yep, here we go. There it is. And again, you know, the name of the network is one thing, that's great, but I'm here today to just kind of show you about how getting the name of the vendor based upon the OUI that we've plucked out of the air and plugged into our little lookup and being able to see who the manufacturer is of a device can also be very helpful. I would never say that 7Signal is a security tool by any means, but little things like this can go a long way in raising your level of awareness and seeing what the heck is going on out there. And one final thing that I just wanted to mention. Yeah, you and me, we can't see or hear Wi-Fi, but 7Signal can.